Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Chicago, Illinois, Sunday, September 17th, 2023.
An 11-year-old recovering from a second surgery appeals for peace amid her pain.
To see my family go through this is so hard right now. I just don't want to go through this anymore.
Today, Trinity, Washington was surrounded by her family, friends, and community members at the Chicago Police Department's 10th District. This after the girl and her family were allegedly the target of a racial slur. Then, the girl was attacked by two women September 17th.
It grieves me deeply to see what has happened to Trinity. It's not something that she nor any child deserves.
The group gathered today questioned why they say police didn't respond to the incident immediately. And on Saturday, Washington's mother says someone related to the alleged perpetrators threatened her at gunpoint. She and a 10th District Council member say police again were delayed in responding.
My house have not been the same since this happened. School, she missed school. She tells me all the time. She miss her friends. It's just so hard.
I didn't know I have to be fearful of my life to come outside again.
Chicago police offered this statement saying the department will not tolerate violence in our communities, especially violence against children. We stand with the child who was injured and will continue to support her and her family as she recovers from this heartbreaking attack. Chicago police confirm a woman was arrested in connection with the girl's beating and charged with aggravated battery to a child. And a man was arrested for allegedly threatening the girl's mother on Saturday. He is charged with aggravated assault, use of a deadly weapon. Regarding questions about response times or upgrading charges to hate crimes, CPD tells us this investigation is active and ongoing.
You know, people ask all the time, whatever happened to the Black-Brown Alliance? Well, in a recent hate crime that took place in Chicago, we're reminded exactly what happened. Illinois has had a huge surge in migrants from the south of the border in the last 5 decades, and it's been particularly intense in the last 10 years. And how have these new arrivals been doing since they got there? Well, on Sunday, September 17th, on the west side of Chicago, 2 Hispanic women decided to celebrate Mexican Independence Day by violently attacking an 11-year-old black girl, mutilating her face with a broken glass bottle, as well as breaking her nose. And this was a hate crime. These 2 white Latinos were calling that black girl racial slurs while they were savagely attacking her. And why did they do that? Because the little girl had been walking her puppy, and these 2 scumbags didn't think that she got the puppy out of their way fast enough. They brutalized an 11-year-old child. Now keep in mind, this hate crime happened weeks ago. This is not something that happened in the last 24 hours. This was weeks ago. And at last report, since the attack, the police in Chicago have dragged their feet. Now, there's been some loose reports that one of the attackers may have been arrested, but there's no mugshots of this person, so it's unclear what, if anything, has happened at all. The community's been demanding that action be taken and that these criminals be held accountable. But of course, the authorities are in league with these criminals. They're carrying out the kind of violence that the authorities want done, so that's the reason why they're allowing them to remain on the loose. And speaking of loose, these 2 she-thugs had some male apparently living with them. I call this thing a male, I dare not call it a man. A week after the attack, this fool decided to threaten the little girl's mother with a gun. Apparently he was angry about the media attention that was brought to the crime that his 2 skank friends committed. Now, the girl's mother said that he also pulled a gun on her a second time, and naturally the Chicago police, who we're told work so hard to protect the public, they didn't do anything about this. In fact, as far as responding goes, they barely responded. See, the police are totally complicit in a lot of the crimes that happen, especially in black neighborhoods. And in many cases, the police orchestrate, if not carry out these crimes. They allow certain criminals to operate as a way to disrupt and harm the black community from within. Haven't you ever noticed how certain punks who commit crimes in our community always seem to be able to get out on bail repeatedly no matter how many crimes they commit? Meanwhile, when they arrest a law-abiding black citizen on false charges, that person winds up in jail for weeks, months, or in some cases years. Now, the name of this male has been made public. His name is DeAndre Carroll. He's 32 years of age. So they put this guy's name out there. They're letting people know who he is. But those two white Latinos who savaged that little black girl, they're not putting their names out there at all. I'm sure that's just one happy coincidence. We all know what's going on here. You've got some worthless bedbuck who's willing to pull a gun on another black person because he's totally dependent on interracial sexual access. He'll do anything for some run-of-the-mill hood rats from south of the border. This is the enemy within. The black community has a right to protect itself and to prevent this kind of off-code behavior from taking place. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power tools, because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. You always got some people running around talking about how they're doing some sort of colorblind kumbaya stuff. They try to make their being color-struck or try to make it where they're chasing interracial sexual access. They want to make it sound like it's virtuous somehow, when it's not. This is codependency, and it just goes to show with this incident the depths that some black men will stoop to just because they think that they're doing something, when in truth, they're doing nothing at all. And of course, if these two pieces of trash who attacked that little girl speak out, they'll claim that they're not racist because they've got this worthless chump living with them. They're laying up with this moron. A lot of non-white groups have long since figured out the deflections and tactics that white power has used to try to confuse the issue when they get called out. A lot of these non-white groups know that the white media and the authorities will pretend to believe them when they use the exact same excuses and talking points. And others will look the other way. The newly installed Black Mirror Chicago has been MIA on this one, as has the rest of your so-called black leadership in that town. I guess these guys don't want to run afoul of any groups whose votes they may want if they try to run for higher office. Now, there's been a couple of TikTok videos or what have you that claim to have pictures of this DeAndre character, as well as the two racist white Latinos who attacked that child. But without solid verification, I don't think it prudent to post it because mistakes have been made in the past. But I think it tells us everything we need to know that as it pertains to these two assailants, the police have taken so long to do nothing. And even then, the reports are that only one of the assailants was arrested, but again, we don't have verification of that. The community is demanding that the assailants be charged with hate crimes, as they should be. But where's the pressure that should be coming for your black misleaders? The white media is working to keep this one suppressed. They're treating this the exact same way that they did the murder of Laquan McDonald. That's how you know the fix is in. They're doing their part to try to figure out how do we make it where there's as little consequences as possible for mutilating and beating a black child. Harming a child. They ought to be glad the city doesn't have riots going on right now. When you have degenerates harming black children, that's not the time for marching or demonstrations. That's a 3-alarm fire, and it requires serious action. Trinity, Washington has already had multiple surgeries to try to repair the damage done to her face, but the authorities and the white media protecting these two pieces of trash who harmed her, that's the real damage that's been done. These anti-black racist civilians are the irregular forces of white supremacy. They're the ones who carry out the dirty work that the police think is a little bit too risky for them to try, like, say, mutilating a black child. And you can tell it's deliberate and it's sanctioned by the police because of how consistently they never do anything about these acts in particular. And while the white media tries to act like this is some unprecedented incident, the black grassroots has been calling this out for many years now. There's a reason why you had a Latino in Texas killing people, meanwhile he had a swastika tattoo on him. A lot of these immigrants look at themselves as being white, and everyone knows the most reliable way to signal to the dominant society that you want to be on team white supremacy is to attack black people. Are you auditioning to be an honorary member of the oppressor class? Just go ahead and harm some black people. Go ahead and denigrate black people. Use all sorts of racist tropes against black people, and you'll get that pat on the head. What this does is to simultaneously attack black people because we're the only ones resisting white supremacy, but it also shows how dedicated these others are to maintaining the racial status quo. It just goes to show what the black grassroots has been saying all along. Some of the worst white supremacists are people who aren't even classified as white. This incident is why the black grassroots are not supporting all of this immigration, because the people who come here often come from countries and cultures that practice heinous anti-black racism and anti-black violence. And then they bring that violence here and carry out the same stuff that they were doing in Latin America. And they carry out this barbarity against a little black child. That's why I was telling you yesterday about that so-called police officer in Jacksonville, Florida, Josu Garriga, who helped to violently attack Lakean Woods. And this guy happens to be an immigrant himself. This is what's been going on, has been going on for a long time. People who come from cultures where they feel as if attacking black people, well, that's just part of our normal day. Well, it's not normal for us. The violence that was done against that child, you gotta wonder, was that part of the Mexican independence celebration? Is this what it means to them? The anti-black racism in these Latin American countries is very well documented, but they deny it no end. They claim there is no anti-black racism down there, when in reality, there's no organized resistance against it. Remember, there's never been a civil rights movement or black power movement outside of the U.S. So these other black groups out in the diaspora, most of them try to cling to the idea that they're on the same team as their oppressors. You got black people in Jamaica and in the islands and even in Africa who try to convince themselves that they're subjects, that is, honorary whites, of the British Empire. In South America, they try to convince themselves that they're actually conquistadors or something, because they got one family member back in the day who was some white Spaniard who knocked up one of their ancestors, and apparently they want to see themselves as a community, as a nation, just being one happy dysfunctional family, when in truth, they're considered illegitimate offspring of their oppressors. There's no real pushback going on down there. See, these folks in the black diaspora, they like to brag about how more of their enslaved African ancestors were sent to South America than to North America, but that doesn't mean anything when they don't use their numbers. This incident also underscores why we need an anti-black hate crime law, specifically to protect black people. We are and have always been the number one and the majority targets of hate crimes in the United States. And as this incident shows, a large number of those hate crimes are not being carried out by white people. They're being carried out by quote-unquote people of color. If anyone requires a hate crime law to protect them, black people in America do. And while we're on the subject of protection, we also have to accept that we must take on the responsibility to protect ourselves and other black people. We are being attacked by the police and any anti-black racist maggot on the street who wants to attack us, and they're targeting black children. We have to understand that we don't need to raise our hand and ask permission to protect ourselves or each other. That is our duty and our responsibility. That is the appropriate response to anti-black violence, especially if they're aiming that violence against black children. We have to demonstrate that next time anyone thinks that they're going to be celebrating a culture of anti-black racism, we are ready and willing to let them know the party is over. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Stay Positive, Alice Ransom, Wally Bilal, Andrew Lewis, and Naji95. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.